Hello, everyone. I'm Erik D'Souza, and you are joining us today for a very special podcast. It is the last one of 2024, and we are joined not by one author, but if you're watching the video, you can see you're joined today by 8 of the Mesdames and Messieurs of Mayhem. The Mesdames and Messieurs of Mayhem are a collective of established Canadian crime fiction authors and talented new writers of the genre. Please visit their website, madamesdemayhem.com, and view their CBC documentary about them, a short film formatted for the CBC. A little bit about their new anthology. M is the 13th letter of the alphabet and begins so many wicked words: malice, Machiavelli, mayhem, and of course murder. But it all heads up mischief, melody, madcap mystery, and what could be better suit the Mesdames de Mayhems and Messieurs of Mayhem. After all, 13 is their lucky number. So today we're going to be talking a little about the history of the Mesdames of Mayhem. There's actually more writers in the group than we have here, but we've got 8 representatives. We're also going to talk about the different anthologies they've written, focus a lot on their newest one. We're going to try to keep this as controlled as we can, but I'm not used to talking to so many people at the same time. So we're going to start with Donna and Madeleine. Could you tell us a little bit about the history of the Mesdames?
Yes, well, in 2012, Madeleine approached and had an idea that putting together a collective with people we knew, because we had bonded really well with critique groups that we were working with on a regular basis. And Madeleine's idea was that if we could convince the members of our various critique groups to join us and form a collective, then there was no telling what we could do in terms of helping to promote and helping to develop our skills and just basically working together to enhance and hone our own writing chops, so to speak. So I thought it was a brilliant idea. And I was already playing around with independent publishing at the time. So I was learning the ropes of formatting and putting together publications for ebooks and for print books. So it just tied in really nicely to Madeleine's idea. So in 2013, we came out with our very first anthology titled 13. At the time, we had 13 writers who were part of our collective. Thank you, Madeleine. Madeleine is showing the book right now, so that's wonderful. That's the very first of our, I think we're up to 6 anthologies now. Um, and I'm going to turn this over to Mad in a second because she'll have some exact numbers, but I think we are now up to working with 25 writers on an ad hoc basis, 22 of whom had stories in our latest anthology, The 13th Letter. Madeleine, can you fill in some of the gaps for me?
I think you pretty much covered it, Donna. The other thing was the reason we banded together was to deal with social media, this new beast in 2013. And really, we relied a lot on Donna because she set up our first website. And we sort of together kind of stumbled along, learned how to use Facebook, learned how to use Twitter, now X. And I have to say, we have just recently migrated to Blue Sky, and we're establishing a presence there. I found I drew on my business background. I have an MBA. My specialty was sort of IT, but we figured 13 was great branding because it's sinister, it's crime, and we've been blessed. We've had a wonderful book cover artist who Donna found for us, and Sarah Garrick, who's designed each of our covers, and she also designed our logo. And it's very important from a business point of view to have a branding. We felt, as Erik pointed out earlier, that it would be a really great way for people to get to know our work. If they liked our story in the anthology, then they could go to our website, madamesofmayhem.com, and look us up individually and find our individual websites and go and look at our work. Some of our members are incredibly prolific, and there's lots and lots to choose from comedy to noir.
I've noticed that a lot of your anthologies have different themes, and a lot of anthologies do. So I know it's easy to say, yeah, it's a crime anthology, but usually when you're putting an anthology together, you focus on one thing. I know Canadian Crime Writers did the Cold Canadian, and we focused on the cold. Your guys' recent one is focusing on the letter M, but you've done other themes. So I believe, Jane, you were going to say a little bit about that?
Yes, we have so much fun uh, deciding what to use as a theme, and we want to make it broad enough that everybody can have a bit of fun interpreting it in different ways. But we also want to appeal to the reader. Um, and it's been such a joy to do it. It started off originally where we really just came up with an idea and that was it. But now we're very democratic. Now everybody gets a chance to submit ideas. We vote on it. And this delightful group of writers, we always seem to find something that works for everybody. I'm very pleased with it. So what do you think, Rosemary?
Yeah, and we've come up with some great, that's the process, the democratic process, and all very amicable, and everybody's satisfied with the theme that's chosen. And then we've come up with some great themes. The first one was the 13 that Madeleine held up. It's unfortunately it's backwards here. I won't hold them up. That was a general. The first book was a general mystery collection and crime fiction collection. And then the second one was in 2 years later. We basically done a book every 2 years, skipped to 3 years in the pandemic. But the second one was 13 o'clock, and that was based on time. And there's all sorts of interesting things, the twisted tales of time, because time is, we're getting older, we're running out of time. There were stories about running outside of time, all sorts of interesting stories. And it was the first anthology where we initially had 13 women. In that anthology, we had a male author, Ed Pivovarchik, and we're up to 3. We have 3 Messieurs now with all the women, and a nice combination. And then we had 2 years later, we had 13 Claws, and that was an animal animal-themed collection. We had many cats, a couple of dogs. We had dragons and a pig. And the pig story won the Crime Writers of Canada's best short story that year. So exciting. Catherine Astolfo's wonderful story called Outlier. And we had a story about animal crackers by Kathy Dunphy. Then 2 years later, we had In the Key of 13. That was music. And that was in 2019. 3 years later, we had In the Spirit of 13, and they were many ghost stories, but there were other interpretations of spirits, such as alcohol and the effects of alcohol, and a story about bootlegging. There were 23 stories, and now we're up to this year, the 13th letter, and we've talked about that, the M words, including money as well as murder. So that's our theme. So there's all sorts of other things I'm excited about the other things we can explore.
One of the other things that you guys do is a lot of public events. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but sometimes we have to leave our houses and our computers and meet the public. So you've had many or participated in many events. Lynne, could you tell us about a few of them?
Oh, well, it's one of the best things, the most enjoyable things, because when you write, you often don't get any reaction. You don't know how people are reacting to your stories. And at the public events, we often get to read aloud and excerpts. And I write mostly funny stories, very light, and they're not cozies. I do not write cozies, but they all have a sting in them, I think, but they're funny. And it's so lovely hearing people laugh when you read out loud to them. One of my recent experiences was reading at a club called The Black Eagle in the Gay Village in Toronto. And it was queer noir at the bar. And I do not write queer stories and I do not write noir stories, but I was invited. And I read from a scene where from the anthology, the 13th letter, and my letter M was about money, about scamming. It was called Scamming Granny, and it was about these phone calls grannies get about their grandchildren having been in a car accident. And my granny realizes that she's being scammed, and she and her friends decide to trick the scammer. And the scene I read was when she has a shopping bag filled with a cookie tin, you know, those metal tins with very sharp corners, and she hits the would-be scammer in the crotch with the metal coffee tin in the shopping bag. And there's a dramatic moment when he falls to the ground and the ladies pounce on him and hold him for the police. And that got a very good laugh when she hit him in the crotch. So that was a pleasure appearing at that appearing in public and being able to hear the reaction of your listeners. And people wanted to buy the book, and unfortunately I didn't have any copies there. So I think we have to make sure we have copies of the 13th letter anytime we go out to read, in case somebody wants to buy a copy.
And Blair has been one of our most stalwart supporters when we go out in public.
Great. I'll use that segue. Erik, always nice to see you there. Yes, and I think Lynne hit upon an interesting thing, because I think as a writer, you're kind of extroverted in many ways, or introverted rather, but then you want to have that slice of extroverted personality to get out there and meet the readers. One of the great things about living in Toronto, and this probably applies across the country, because the Mesdames and Messieurs are all across Canada, although I would say a great concentration of them are in Toronto. And one of the wonderful things about living in Toronto is the Toronto Public Library and the support that they provide to authors. And we've been very fortunate, and Mad should take a lot of credit on this, on arranging various presentations, even workshops. We've done a variety of titles. I think probably the most successful one is, sort of titled along the way of, "Oh, so you want to be a crime writer?" And we've appeared at a variety of different libraries. And frankly, the attendance has been sporadic on one or two people at a few. And then we've been at others where you've got 30 or 40. But I would venture to say that no matter what the crowd, it's very worthwhile. But they just to use the example where, there's probably well over 30 there. That was at the Winchwood Library here in Toronto.
Last January. And when you think it's old, it'd be like the worst time of year to come out.
And they had sort of a mystery club there, so you're speaking to the converted. And they had some really good questions. Not that everyone there wanted to be a crime writer, but they were crime writer aficionados, mystery aficionados. So the questions did range, covering all our different perspectives. Some of the questions were cozy related. Some of the questions were more hard boiled. So it's really gratifying to meet the people there. And Donna, I see you've got your hand up there.
Yes, I'll just jump in and piggyback on what Blair was saying. Sometimes when you go out to the libraries, you can get a good turnout, but just as often it cannot be. But the libraries are still huge supporters because they do things like, for example, recently I was on a panel at something called Georgian Bay Reads. We had about well over 150 people. I would guess probably 200 people in attendance. And it's just a great place to get out and get a name a little bit known, even though it's a smaller community, and share what you've got, shake what your mother gave you, so to speak.
From the feeling of talking to you so far, I guess the word may be eclectic, is you all seem to bring something different to the table. And I find that sometimes fun and sometimes difficult for an anthology because sometimes it's not just noir, sometimes it's not, or sometimes it's cozy, and I guess sometimes the reader gets to pick and choose what they like best. But Lorna, I think you did something different than the rest of the group this time.
No, because although I was invited to join the Mesdames of Mayhem as their first true crime writer, I did not submit a true crime piece for the anthology. It would have just been too way out. Donna and Madeleine were very kind and very polite, and they just explained to me that for me to write a nonfiction piece just wouldn't have made it. So I didn't. But one of the remarks that Madeleine made was that she said that with my fictional contribution to the 13th letter, I was turning to the dark side. Now, I found that a very interesting comment because I am a true crime writer, and I would have thought that I was sort of firmly stuck on the dark side. But, I sort of turned this around in my mind. I've written 3. Now, I have 3 true crime books under my belt. The first one was Drop Dead, A Horrible History of Hanging in Canada. The second one was about the Don Jail. And the third one, which is with the publishers Dunda and Press at the moment, just sort of moving through the editorial process, is called On the Lam, Great and Not So Great Escapes from Prison. So I had to deal with really disturbing topics in these books. Just for example, in Drop Dead, I wrote about the art and the science of hanging. And all of us know Arthur Ellis. He very unfortunately miscalculated the drop, which was the length of the rope needed for one of these hangings, and the person that he was hanging was decapitated. So, these are disturbing subjects. In my upcoming book, On the Lam, I grappled with a chapter devoted to not 1, but 2 serial killers. So I would have thought that I was kind of dark. But the more I thought about Madeleine's comment, the more I felt that, maybe she has a good point. Because as a true crime writer, I focus on dreadful individuals and events and places, but nothing is invented. In the interest of the narrative, I might be selective. I might sort of choose this episode or that personality. For example, in Drop Dead, there were 700 hangings in the period that I focus on. I couldn't discuss or write about all of them. So I am selective, and I consult multiple sources to make sure that I'm being accurate, but everything is true. But with my crime fiction story in the anthology, I'm still writing about dreadful characters and situations, but as a creator and not as a reporter. Granted, there are constraints with everything one writes here. It was a short story format. It was the focus on the letter M, but factual accuracy was not one of the constraints that I was faced with now. So the evil that I've written about here is the product of my own imagination. And I find that that's very much darker than the true crime subjects I write about.
I know we often joke that nobody should ever look up our Google history for crime writers. Also, all of you bring different things to the table. Not only, even crime sort of ventures off to different directions, and we have different aspects of our stories. And I think Melisa wanted to speak a little bit about that.
And the dog wants to speak too. So I'm very excited about that. You might hear my dog. My husband's just about to take him out. So I'm really enjoying listening to the Mesdames and Messieurs talk about being eclectic and working as a team, because I feel like they're so good at embracing and encompassing the variety that we have within this genre and also outside the genre. So I am quite weird compared to other writers sometimes. So for example, my story in this anthology is called Cardiopulmonary Arrest, and it's about it's a science fiction crime story, which you don't see as often. And it was a finalist for the Roswell Award for short science fiction. And I'm also moving into bringing into supernatural aspects into my regular crime stories. So I hope Erik remembers that he had interviewed me before about my Hope C stories. So now Hope is also battling ghosts and encountering dragons and all sorts of strange things like that, and still incorporating humor. So, for example, and I'm tackling the 7 deadly sins. So the Shapes of Wrath is about anger. Was actually a finalist for the Crime Writers of Canada Award this year, and Sugar and Vice and Killing Me Slothfully are the next ones. So I'm just having fun with bringing in different aspects. And for any writers out there, I just really encourage you to, we always are told like how to market and how to sell, which I had to say is my weak point. But in general, you want to be able to enjoy your creativity, whatever that means to you. So I hope that if you love other genres and read other genres, and you might feel a calling to write in them and to share your uniqueness with the world, just like this collective is doing.
And I don't think I ever told you, last year, your video, which we recorded together, was like the most watched recorded video or interview from Crime Writers of Canada. So definitely remember that. And actually, in the
Thank you so
podcast,
much.
I think you're in the top 5 of like all time for podcasts. So
Yeah, you know what? I actually didn't know that, but the Mesdames told me. So yeah, another way that they're so great. Thank you.
We mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, and I think my first introduction to your collective was through CBC, the documentary. So could you tell us a little bit about that? I think Madeleine, and how did you score that?
Well, it was one of those, it was just total serendipity. One of our biggest supporter was the Beaches library, the Beaches branch of the library. And I think we were giving a talk about, so you want to be a crime writer. And at the end of this, a young woman came up and said to me, "Oh, I'm a filmmaker and I would really like to make a film about you." And I thought, that's nice. That's really nice. Well, it turned out she and my friend Lisa Denicolidis, another one member of our collective, really connected. And then Lisa called me and said, "Really, you should talk to Kat. You really should talk to Kat and you come and have a coffee." So I thought, "Oh, sure, I'll have a coffee. Why not?" And so I could spare an hour. And so I met Lisa and Kat for coffee. And 3 hours later, we were still talking. And turned out that Kat is an amazing documentarian. She's got a number of really great award-winning documentaries under her belt. And I think she was fascinated by the fact that many of us are over 50 and still sentient. So I said, sure, and why not, and I put it out to the team. Everybody was really enthused. And so we went about making a film. It was quite a big job, my daughter's in the film business, so I understood that, how much work is involved in actually filming. And it's really weeks and weeks of work and lots of people involved. And I think Kat focused on a few of us who have very interesting stories, like Mel, I think, who has a bit of mafia in her family background. And, Lisa comes from South Africa. Donna, you should speak to this because you're one of the stars in the documentary.
Yeah, it was so much fun to make. And I was very, very grateful to Kat and to Justine as well for putting it together. And, just getting to what Erik had said earlier about mentioning the websites. If you're looking to see the documentary we're talking about, it's not long. It's a CBC Gem short doc, so it's 15 minutes long. And I think it's really well worth watching if you want to kind of get the essence of us. You'll find it under Meet the Mesdames. And if you go to YouTube, then that means that the CBC can see your like and the fact that you watched it. And it's terrific for CBC to be able to see that and to know that, hey, we matter to the writing community. I think we really do. And I think the people who watched it, I had such terrific feedback on that documentary. On top of it being so fun to make. And Madeleine, thank you for putting it together.
Well, I can't take credit cat, so there's two wonderful things that happened. The cat has joined our collective, and we turned her to the dark side. Cat has written a couple of very good stories that are included in our collection, both in and when in the letter M, and I think that's about all I can really add. Donna, is there anything I'm missing?
Well, just to throw out there again, our website, mesdamesofmayhem.com. Simple as that, mesdamesofmayhem.com. Get to know all our mesdames and messieurs, not just the ones who are featured in that documentary, because they're all incredibly talented. And I gotta say, just to paraphrase an old line from a movie that you'll all recognize, you make me want to be a better writer. You really do. Each one of you in your own way. I mean, Lorna with the true crime. I'm a true crime fan, so I know what goes into that. Melisa, your stories are just so, I don't want to say strange because they're not as far out there as you think, but they are out there. They're really always very interesting. Jane's are always so thoughtful and just they really delve into the human condition. And Rosemary's got that sense of business. She gets right down to and Lynne, you make me laugh, and Blair, you make me laugh. And Madeleine, I just think you're brilliant. So there you go. There's the Mutual Adoration Society. Well, maybe not mutual, but
Let's assume it's mutual.
now let's assume it's mutual for purposes of this.
And Donna writes a wonderful story as well. And is quite a prolific author.
Thank you.
I just bought my copy of your book, and I was surprised at some of the things you did, Donna.
Oh, which book?
No, I meant the anthology, this anthology.
The 13th letter. Excellent. Everybody, please go buy the 13th letter. That's the other thing I want to throw out there.
Well, let's start with you, Donna. Could you tell us a little bit about the story you've written for this anthology?
Yes, it was titled If You Should Fall. And it was it features a protagonist who is a sugar tapper in the sugar bush. And by that, I mean she is a sugar bush farmer, she and her husband, and they are about to retire and sell the farm. So take that however you like. And, I think it wants to be a sweet story, but it doesn't quite make it there. It's got some dark turns. It really wants to be a sweet story about love and that sort of thing. So the reason I came up with it is because my husband and I actually have a place up north, not far from the sugar bush. And we've always been fascinated with it. We love maple sugar. A number of years ago, there was a maple syrup heist that was quite notable in the Canadian scene. And the idiots who perpetrated this heist, because they really were idiots, they tried to get the maple syrup across the border in bulk. And I think that's how they were caught. I can't remember all the details, but I've always had that in the back of my mind. I mean, what a bunch of freaking idiots, if you'll pardon my saying. But I notice now that Jamie Lee Curtis is out with a new television show called Sticky. So I was unnerved to think I wasn't as original as I thought I was. But I do plan to watch it. And if you watch it and you like it, then hopefully you'll like my story called If You Should Fall.
I should ask, I'm guessing your M was maple, but
yes, my M was maple.
So maybe let's everyone start with that.
Yeah.
What is your M? How about Melisa?
Okay, cool. I didn't explicitly say, so this is a spoiler, but one of my M's would be murder and another one would be money. So in my case, the question is always, would you want to know when you're going to die? And in this case, there is a machine that will tell you how you're going to die. And the protagonist does not want to know, but his father is very rich and controls his life and wants him to use the machine. So this is about a very dysfunctional family. And I guess it's one of those things, guns don't kill people. So in this case, the machine's not going to kill you, but your dad has been kind of trying his whole life So what are you going to do about it? And so if you enjoy hearing about terrible rich people and the things they do to each other, then you might want to tune in to cardiopulmonary arrest.
That sounds so interesting. Madeleine, what's your M?
The letter M is M is for memory. Many years ago, I saw a very sad documentary about an abused child, and her sibling had no memory of the fact that he had a sister, and it always stuck with me. And I wanted to write a story about it. So I got an idea when I went to Calgary, and I went and visited it as a house I lived in as a child, and it stirred very strong memories for me. So I took both things, the strong emotion that I felt seeing this documentary and the strong memories that it evoked when I saw the house in Calgary, and I put them together. My husband tells me I feel setting aimlessly, and I do. So the setting of the story is my childhood home in Calgary, but of course the story's got nothing to do with me. I made it up, but it's a bit of a departure for me. It's a psychological thriller. M is for memory.
I worked with mail as one of the sort of features of the story. There was information in mail received and saved. But like Madeleine, my major theme was memory. I love exploring aspects of my own family in my stories. In this case, I used my 3 great aunts and sort of transposed them into a situation that is sort of a bit of a horror for a lot of people. The intense overbuilding, taking over farmland, taking over land, the intense overbuilding, and the nasty sort of people who want to remove land from farmland. And I had so much fun with it. I often do memories or family situations. And it's a way of sort of writing my memoirs at the same time. But I have a lot of fun with it. The story is called Sweet Coral Bells. You think of that as being very sweet. You can apply it to the little old ladies in this story. And they aren't such sweet little old ladies at all. I had a lot of fun with it, but it was a killer to write. So there we go.
I love talking about old ladies in my books.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to read yours. Blair, could you tell us about your inspiration?
Certainly. For me, the 13th letter is about murder, but just as everyone was talking about, I think you could also say a little bit of maybe medieval English, but you'd have to read this story on that to get the full background on that. A lot of people say, "Oh, do I and I'm sure the other writers here have received the same thing. Do you have a drawer full of stories and you hear about an anthology? Oh, here it is right here, and I'll pull it out." I'm not that way. And actually, one of the great things about an anthology is when you come up with a theme and then you have to start thinking about it. And it's like, okay, let's start thinking about music, or let's start thinking about medicine. And of course, in this case, the 13th letter. So like a lot of authors, I'm very fond of going down that giant rabbit hole of Google, but then I was Googling and I came across some things to do with the history of the language. And again, without giving anything away at the moment, my story is called 27, and it is something that involves a lot of suspects, and without giving it all away, the letter 27 is being scrawled in blood by the victim, and then you get all these possible suspects. So a little bit of research, but again, it was a lot of fun to write and read, sorry. Freudian slip. It was a lot of fun to write, and hopefully it'll be a lot of fun to read.
You'll have to ask the rest of the Mesdames if you write about fun to read. Lorna, could you tell us about your story?
Yes. My story is called On Moon Mountain. So I am particularly proud of the fact that I managed to squeeze 2 M words into the title alone. But I assure you that they're not there merely because I wanted to achieve some sort of quota with the M words. Both the moon and the mountain have important roles to play in the narrative. And murder, or at least attempted murder, is another M word referenced in the story. So, on the mountain, in the moonlight, a vengeful bully is preparing to push an unconscious enemy over a cliff. At the last moment, he's interrupted by the unexpected appearance of someone he knows and despises, the meek and seemingly defenseless victim of all his harassment and abuse. The main themes of my story are bullying, violence, and retribution. The 2 central characters are the tormentor, his name is Wendell Williams, and the tormented, whose name is Oswald Otley, with the 2 main sections of the narrative reflecting their conflicting points of view. The burning question of the story is whether there is anything Oswald can do to prevent Wendell from carrying out this dastardly crime. And I invite readers to turn to page 200 of the 13th letter to find out.
You sound like you were the most prepared. Completely scripted, Lorna. Good job.
Absolutely. Nothing left to chance there. It's just like our writing. I mean, what do we leave to chance when we write?
Fair enough. Rosemary, what was your influence or
Yes,
inspiration?
my story is the One Hell of a Lady. What is the name of the One Hell of a Lady? And I'm the author of the Pat Tierney mystery series. There are 4 novels, and I'm just finishing up the 5th, which I hope it will come out next year, in 2025. And Pat Tierney is a financial planner, and she's a financial advisor, financial planner, and she works with clients trying to get their financial houses in order. And in this story, I have a number of short stories in which she features as well. And in this one of her clients, who is an elderly lady, Luella Cruikshank, in one of the, actually she's in the first Pat Tierney novel, but in this one, she has been found dead in her home. And Pat feels very protective of all her clients, and she has been called on by the daughter to help out a bit. The daughter lives in Calgary. The mother and Pat live in Toronto. So Pat's been asked to help find out what happened. It looks like it could be just an accident. She may have slipped. Pat doesn't believe that, though. So we get to the basis of what happened to Luella in this novel. It's the M is it is manslaughter rather than murder, and but you don't find that out till the end. And it's, of course, it deals with money. Many crimes to deal with money. Money is the source of greed, and greed, it can lead to all sorts of bad things, including murder and manslaughter.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of murder and money. But let's see, Lynne, you're the last. Let's see if you're following the trend.
Well, as I said before, mine is definitely about money. There is a wad of money in that shopping bag, which is being swung by my protagonist, Charlotte. And that is what scammers are after. The last line in my story, Scamming Granny, and by the way, the title can be read two ways. Either they're scamming a granny, or the granny is scamming them. And the last line is when the policeman finally arrives to arrest the scammer, and they invite him to have some of the cookies that were in the cookie tin, and they say, sit down and have a cookie, and we'll show you how to scam a scammer. So that is the theme.
I guess at this point, I can invite you all. Is there any last words from any of you?
Yeah.
Jane?
One thing I'd like to add is I'm very proud of the fact that the Mesdames of Mayhem have encouraged writers. have had contests where you can get your story published if you win the contest. I think encouraging writers is wonderful. The other thing is that the panels, et cetera, that we put on at libraries, I always try and encourage people to write, to, to say it's not that frightening a thing, write.
Mhm.
And I love that about the Mesdames, the teaching aspect, and it's so much fun. My God, this is a wonderful group of people, and I'm so grateful to all of you. And
Yes.
thank you, Erik.
Thank you,
And
Erik.
the only other
Thank
thing
you,
I'd
Erik.
like to add, yes, yes. The only other thing I'd really like to add is, as writers, we're really always reaching, and I love to see all our writers reaching. And as Rosemary said, we are only the tip of the iceberg. Look for our colleagues, people like Melody Campbell and Catherine Dunphy and Catherine Astolfo and
Sylvia
Carol
Warsh.
Sylvia. Oh yes, you will
Our
love
West
Sylvia
Coast
Warsh.
kids.
Yeah. Yeah,
Our-
there are so many. When you go to our site, mesdamesofmayhem.com, scroll down the side panel and you will see all of us. So anybody that we've neglected or left out, you'll find them there. And you're going to get some great joy out of all these people. We're really reaching all the time. We're always trying to become better writers. So.
All right, here's one last question for you. As a democracy, have you started talking about your next theme?
I think we're just going to concentrate on sales right now.
We have ideas perking. You never know.
You never know, but people are full of ideas, so you never know what the next number 7 is going to be. Lucky number 7.
Oh, I like
Honestly,
that.
there are so many strong ideas for anthologies. You can always, you can always start off with strong ones before we go on to the next. But if I could just add to other people in general, we talk about writing being a lonely profession. So it's really great to find a group of people that you can work toward. And I would encourage everybody to do that. Whether you're able to join the Mesdames or not, really just find your people and keep swimming.
So for everyone listening or watching, thank you so much for listening to this show. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Erik.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much, Erik and Crime Writers of
Thank you
Canada.
so much.
Thank you.